Hey y'all, Marie here. Omori is a game that I hold very close to my heart. It's an amazing portrayal of trauma, scarily so. But in that sense, it's also very comforting. The game itself is pretty intense, and as such, I don't recommend it if you're prone to panic attacks. I mean, hell, the first thing you see when you open the game is a content warning. So, naturally, this video will have the same content warnings, being depression, anxiety, and suicide. Despite all the psychological horror, the game remains beautiful, a masterpiece. I'm not going to do an overview of the entire game, but rather talk about just the climax, the scene that makes all of the sadness and the pain turn into tears, the scene that really solidified this game as a true masterpiece. And that, of course, is the final duet. Obviously, since this is the climax, there are major spoiler warnings ahead, so without further ado, remember to smash that subscribe. If they know the truth, you'll never be able to regain their trust. No matter what you do, it will be hopeless. All you'll do is make things worse. It would be better to just die. So while I wouldn't quite call this scene sad, it still makes me cry tears of sadness. Similar to like when you read like a romance novel and the main pair seems like they won't get together, but then at the end of the day, they do. Like the end of the day, this cutscene is also supposed to have a good ending, and it does. It's Sunny finally accepting the truth and letting 4 years of long pain finally be at ease. So what is this truth that Sunny unveils? So Sunny wanted to play music with his older sister Mari, and his friends all pitched in for a whole year to buy him a violin for Christmas. He and his sister practiced for an upcoming recital, and Mari put a lot of stress on Sunny, more than he could handle. On the day of the recital, Mari and Sunny got to an argument because Sunny was being pushed too hard. This resulted in Sunny throwing his violin down the stairs, breaking it just hours before the recital. Mari was furious and yelled at Sunny, getting in his face. He tried to push her away from him, but used too much force, sending her tumbling to her death down the stairs. Their friend Basil, who had just arrived at the house, saw everything happen and went to comfort Sunny. He eventually made a plan to frame it as a suicide so Sunny wouldn't get in trouble. After hanging the body, Sunny and Basil went back inside, but before they did, they looked back at the body. The image was burned into their heads, and they got severe PTSD from the experience. Sunny chose to repress it and live 4 years in almost complete isolation. And that is about the shortest summary I can make of the truth. The final duet scene is a direct result of this, and comes after 3 major events that I want to cover. The first of these segments that I want to discuss is the black space segment. This is the part where we see Sunny's inner mind, and it's just this incomprehensible mess, overrun with so much of his grief, trauma, and guilt. There is so much going on, and this actually gave me a panic attack while playing it my first time. From Omori killing Basil multiple times before Basil can talk about the truth, to a very infamous scene with Miwo, Sunny's pet cat, inside of his mind, which used to be his cat. Everything in this area of Sunny's mind is just utterly horrifying. We can see the lengths that Sunny went through to repress all this trauma and how much Omori does to stop Sunny from remembering the painful truth. The segment ends with Omori directly stabbing Basil in headspace and sitting on top of a throne of red hands. Omori has done his job for another day. Sunny won't remember the truth. That is until the next segment. The truth segment, the Basil fight, and memory lane. I elected to keep this entire sequence into the truth sequence. That doesn't make any sense. Why did I write that in the script like that? That's a really poor way of... I decided to include all 3 of these events as one in the truth sequence. I'm gonna really have to, fix that. With the truth sequence initially kicking it off, followed by the Basil fight and Sunny remembering his repressed good memories on memory lane, fixing his mental violin. I'll touch on that a little bit later. So, the truth sequence opens up, and we refight all of the old bosses of Sunny's phobias. And this reveals something behind you, Sunny's main something. And in fact, a distorted view of Marie's corpse, which I already talked about in the truth sequence earlier, or about the truth earlier. And as we progress through this distorted landscape, we keep finding pictures of what happened on that day, but they are all out of order. And when you get through everything, which is not easy, like, this segment is really hard to play because it's so mentally draining, and it's hard. You eventually have to organize everything and finally find out what the truth was on that day. Then Sunny wakes up in the middle of the night to confront Basil. Basil was plotting on committing suicide that night, and seeing Sunny, he says there's no way to escape it and he will end it. This kicks off the Basil fight scene. The fight against Basil is a stressful scene where we see just how messed up Sunny and Basil have become. Basil refuses to believe Sunny did it, and Sunny is forced to fight Basil, becoming more and more stressed out. When the fight hits its climax, Sunny gets his eye stabbed out and he passes out. From here, Sunny is then moved to Memory Lane. You progress through it, getting 6 different memories of Sunny and his friends before the incident. Each of these are all good memories that were repressed alongside the bad. Upon remembering all of these, Sunny reconstructs his mental violin, which is symbolism directly for his relationship with all of his friends and Mari. He's ready to accept the truth. He's done it. And this brings us to the last scene before the cut scene of the final duet, the Omori boss fight. So before the fight, there is a cutscene, as there is with most fights. This one starts off with Sunny's other friends that are not Basil in their present day forms, not the forms you see inside of Sunny's head. In their current appearances, they tell him that they want to know the truth and that they don't think he's a bad person because he did something bad. I think this is more Sunny talking to himself, because this is in his head, and he understands that even if they don't forgive him, it's still important that they know the truth, and he's accepting that they will probably be mad at him, maybe even never talk to him again. Honestly, this is why I love Sunny as a character. We see him finally accept the truth and prepared to accept the consequences. He starts to play a song on stage, but quickly collapses, unable to continue. Omori, however, he doesn't like it. He wants Sunny to stay disassociated. He wants Sunny to stay in this current state of limbo. He wants to be in headspace. So, in a fight of his 2 inner wills, one for truth and one for repression, Sunny and Omori fight. Once you progress far enough into the fight, Omori will start talking about how Sunny is selfish, how he killed Mari, that he should die. The fight itself is a scripted loss, but my first time playing, I didn't know that. Every time Omori is about to lose, a familiar phrase read, "Omori will not succumb," which is a reference to the segments where the player plays as Omori, and instead of dying, he takes one fatal blow before he will die on the next one. I kept fighting for 15 minutes trying to beat Omori in this phase before losing. The game over screen asks, "Do you want to continue?" And upon selecting yes, Sunny will stand up and the final duet cutscene will finally begin. Okay, so now that we've covered the background surrounding this, I think that it's time we finally watch the cutscene itself. Okay, so this whole segment was a lot of information, but now you can see how much of a release this was of his inner pain. We as players get to experience it firsthand. And when the player, and by extension Sunny here, chooses to stand up and persevere, we finally realize all these emotions like fear, anxiety, hurt, guilt, and grief. The scene isn't just a release, but it's Sunny's way of expressing these emotions after years of not experiencing them. It's a bittersweet moment, and Sunny is finally ready to start to work to overcome everything that has happened. You know, waltzes were always my favorite. That's why I chose this song for our last recital. But you always hated it, didn't you? I would lock myself away on the piano, all that practicing, playing the same song over and over. So to analyze why this song sounds bittersweet, being the adjective used for this, let's take a look at the very opening. The first two beats of the song is a descending line from C6. Higher notes on the piano already sound a bit more emotional, and descending down draws out just a bit more sadness. The next two beats are an ascension, but it doesn't go up as high as the descending line, ultimately ending the intro at a lower point than the start. This is actually a reference to Mari being at the bottom of the stair. Okay, all jokes aside, ending your intro sequence on a lower note than you already started sets a mood. The song itself has a fairly stereotypical waltz bass line, starting on one quarter note, followed by two quarter note chords, and the next measure starting on a different note, but having the same chords. Then it returns to the original. Usually these patterns switch after 4 measures, or 2 repetitions of each measure. Usually waltzes sound graceful, but this one sounds more somber. The bass line is the only part of the song that doesn't really gain that somber feeling that the melodies create. It's a reminder that this was originally just supposed to be a piece of music a duo of siblings were supposed to play at a recital. It's a reminder of what has happened, all kept up on what appears to be a generic bass line. So I'm going to give a bit of a demonstration on the bass line I was talking about, and just for a bit of future reference for the next segment, let's keep in mind that C, this is the second part of the C chord, that being C. C major, that is. That's the waltz bass line, plays something like this. And that is the waltz bass line of this song. The song itself is written in C major, but contains many accidentals, effectively changing the key to D major for entire points of the song. This is important as C major is generally a more upbeat sounding key, whereas D major sounds a bit more melancholy. This is a direct parallel to Sunny remembering both the good and the bad memories. The melody itself is very serene and graceful, as most waltzes are. This is also how Sunny views Marie. Understanding the context behind this waltz makes what should be an upbeat and happy-sounding song into a serene and melancholy one. The violin line also creates a sadder mood than many other waltzes. The way the longer notes are played evokes the raw emotion of a sadness within a listener. So the context of the piece and the violin draw sadness, and the piano lines are the main forces that create the happier feel. The piece itself is telling the listener that Sunny's sadness becomes more at ease when thinking about the good times he spent with Mari. Furthermore, it demonstrates how playing this duet, even in Sunny's mind, allows him to finally get closer to the closure he's been tracking. It becomes the last step in letting Sunny finally accept this truth. Another thing I wanted to address was the importance of the key signature. Why did I specify C major instead of A minor? Well, this one reason is that the song starts on C6, and the second note in the melody, where the bass line kicks in, is an E. Furthermore, the bass line starts with the C itself, and this creates 2/3 of the C major chord. The second quarter notes in the bass line afterwards form another 2/3 of the chord. I think another more subtle reason that the song is not an A minor is that the A minor chord and the scale itself sounds unfulfilling, and this is a conclusion to Sunny's journey of remembering. And I want more of a conclusive scale as opposed to something that's not as much conclusive, if that makes sense. And the final reason is that all in all, the A minor scale does not sound as nice as the C major scale. It doesn't sound as upbeat, which contradicts the point of this cutscene being Sunny remembering the good and bad. It throws off the balance of C major being happy and D major being less happy. Alright, so the last little detail I wanted to touch on was the way the instruments are played themselves. Like, just little things throughout the song. Not every note on the violin is played perfectly. Some are out of rhythm, or some of the notes seem slightly off initially. And it's kind of hard to notice until pointed out because they are quick to pass by. It's just kind of a little nod to show that Sunny was stressed and pressured and wasn't playing at the standards that Mari set for him. And yes, it was high standards. It's why they fought on that day. And another thing that isn't related at all to the previous one, so I didn't really have a good segue here, is the piano completely soloing the intro, with the violin being the last instrument you hear. It's subtle, but it's showing that Sunny is able to move on. Just because you've done something bad doesn't make you bad. So pretty much the entire first half of the song is childhood memories. It only changes once it hits the first scene I'm going to talk about more in depth, but these old memories are here to remind us that Sunny is remembering all of these old times and remembering all the past. Moving on from here, though, there are 4 main pieces of symbolism I want to break down, and I will show each of them to you in chronological order. Alright, so the first scene we're talking about is going to be the water part, where Sunny is falling through the water, and I will end this little segment with talking about the part where Sunny is sitting alone. The important part about this scene is Sunny being in the water, and we see it's a near-death experience for him. And the fact that it's a near-death experience is important to remember for a different scene I'm going to talk about. Marie diving in after Sunny isn't exactly symbolism, it just shows the lengths she would go to protect Sunny. Same with the next scene in the sequence, showing how Sunny views Mari. We see his point of view looking at Mari after she saves him. He sees her as heavenly, like a guardian angel almost. These things are also important to note as they will tie into the same later scene I'm going to talk about. Now for the part which I specifically chose for this segment, the hug turning into Sunny sitting alone. Aside from the depressing imagery, we see the shadow on Sunny's front half where Mari was hugging him just a moment before. This is to show just how suddenly the change was for Sunny. From having a sister to her being gone the very next day. This scene is honestly the saddest part in the cutscene for me personally, as I see this as when Sunny truly hits rock bottom. The next scene of Mari and Sunny playing on stage together is just so beautiful. Sunny is recreating what he thinks the recital would have been like in his head and gets that last bit of closure with Mari. It's amazing, honestly. The main reason I chose this scene was to talk about the just little bit where Sunny looks back towards Mari for the last time. It's so sad, but it's so good, and it shows that Sunny has had his sweet moment with Mari. He's ready to wake up and live his own life. So this is the scene that I was talking about earlier that I was going to relate back to. And it's not too much of the cutscene itself, but I feel this very specific portion holds the absolute most value. And do you get the full amount of value? I just want to let you know I've been withholding one important bit of information from earlier on in the game that I'm going to talk about right now. This would be a segment of the game where Omori and Mari are in a party together, and Mari is helping Omori to cross the ocean. Near the end of this sequence, the duo finds the window that is in this cutscene, and Mari says Omori is forgetting something important. It's more likely that she was actually directly talking to Sunny. Her appearance then shifts, most likely being a spirit, as Hiro says he heard a piano at the portion of the game when the same sprite Omori is used, and she leaves through the window. We already know Sunny associates the window with death, as the first time he saw it was while he was drowning. This is the reason that Sunny, and by extension Omori, has thalassophobia, and this thalassophobia is the reason that Mari came along. This inadvertently leads to the whole scene of her leaving, but this connection between Sunny's own close brush with death and Sunny being reminded of Mari's passing is no coincidence. So this brings us back into the final duet window scene, where Sunny, not Omori, is watching Mari go through the window and into the afterlife, and this gives him the final bit of closure he needed. And this finally leads me to the empty piano. With the piano seat being empty, we finally know that Sunny has let go for real. No more hiding in white space, no more repressing. Mari has moved on. And this ties back into the last segment, knowing that Mari's spirit can move on after finally seeing Sunny accept the truth and live his life. After the final duet cutscene, we see Sunny and Omori embrace, with Omori disappearing. And finally ending his escape to headspace, Sunny wakes up in the hospital room with tears. From there, he walks over to Basil's room where his friends are, and he tells them the truth. We don't see his friends' reactions because it's not important. He accepted what happened and is ready to move on. Omori is a beautifully sad, scary, and bittersweet game that will break you down and build you back up again. The final duet is just the ribbon that finishes wrapping the gift of Omori to the player, and I think that this scene is a perfect climax for the game. It encapsulates the happiness and sadness that the journey took the player on. It lets the player get that last little bit of conclusion, and we get to see Sunny, not Omori, show emotion at the end of it. Hopefully, this analysis made the scene even more sweet to you watching. And remember, if you're feeling depressed, it'll all be okay. You'll be able to work through it. In the meantime, keep playing the game of life. And lastly, before I finish this video off, I just wanted to say thank you for coming around this far and sticking to the end. I know that this is a lot of information, and this is my first time actually presenting something like this, but I hope to make more videos like this in the future. It's been a long process, but I feel like the end result has been something I've enjoyed. And I'm just speaking now to my microphone, but I really do appreciate you for sticking around this far, and I hope that you'll consider sharing this video with your friends if you're comfortable with that. That's about it, so I will see you when I see you.